Yeah, we'll continue from here. Yeah, so the two types of case studies include problem solution and a process focused case study. The problem solution case study is the most common approach. You basically define a problem and take the reader on a journey through your process, showing how you solved it step by step. This type is really straightforward and it focuses on delivering a clear solution. So this type of case study is ideal when your project revolves around solving a straightforward problem. Since it's really direct and efficient, it's really perfect for cases where a single solution had a significant impact. It's best for projects that are really clear and concise, and it can showcase how a specific solution drove this tangible result. So a common practice for this type of case study would be like a website redesign, a revamp of an app, or even an internship project that lasts like 3 months. Some of the key components that are in problem solution case studies are the ones that I just mentioned earlier. Problem statement, which is defining the problem you're solving and its significance. Design process, which is walking through your approach from research to ideation to your final wireframe. Challenges and solutions, addressing the main obstacles and how you overcame these. And lastly, the outcome and impact. On the other hand, the process focused case study is all about the journey. You really want to make sure your audience understands every single process that led to your final result. So this format is ideal for more complex projects where the design process was key to overcoming various challenges. If your project required multiple iterations, multiple feedback loops, and creative exploration, the structure allows you to emphasize the problem-solving process rather than just the final outcome. So at LA Blueprint, we typically do a process-focused case study since all our projects last for a year. And here, the key components include initial research, where you start with the user research, user interviews, or competitive analysis, where you're setting the whole context. The ideation exploration is also an important key component since it highlights your creative process, and that's something we really want to learn as the audience, what your design process was and how you explored and got to that final idea. And the final parts are the prototyping, usability testing to show us how you made this design to work and what you're getting from the users. So this is the usability testing and the cognitive walkthrough. And lastly is the final design. But yeah, both case study formats serve different purposes. The problem solution case study showcases your ability to deliver results quickly and efficiently, while the process focused case study highlights your adaptability, your creativity, and problem solving over time. So it really depends. There's no right or wrong answer. You tailor your case study to the story you want to tell your users and your audience and what you think the project kind of entails. Yeah, so I wanted to take this time to kind of go through the Right Girl project. This is our 2023 project from last year. Sorry. Yeah, so now that we explored the two key case studies, let's apply what we've learned and then go through it with a real life example using Right Girl's case study. As we go through this case study, think about which structure fits better. Some questions you can ask yourself are, is it more about solving a clear problem, or is the focus on the entire design process and its iterations? So as we go through this together, you can drop in the chat, but I'll also put a poll later after this so that we can break it down together and you guys can let me know if you think this case study is a problem solution or process-focused case study. Yeah, so let me just give you quick context to what Right Girl is. Right Girl, based in LA, empowers underserved girls and gender-expansive youth by promoting creativity and self-expression through mentorship from a community of women writers. The key question, also known as a problem statement, for this case study is, how can we bring the magic of Right Girl's creative writing programs to a global audience? So yeah, as part of Right Girl's case study, we conducted a competitive analysis and user interviews to better understand the current landscape and user needs. So the first thing we did, part of the user research, was the competitive analysis, where we analyzed 6 competitors and identified key trends. And these are some of the following, which is writing activities are often done directly in-app. There's an emphasis on maintaining streaks, like daily or weekly progress. Many features are locked behind paywalls, restricting access to meaningful content. And lastly, content tends to be surface level, lacking depth or personalization. Another part of the user research includes user interviews, where we spoke with 5 users who revealed some of their frustrations as they are part of RightGirl. They said that they felt pressured to maintain progress through streaks, which added unnecessary stress. Writing tips were often generic or bland, offering little value or inspiration. The writing process felt relentless with no built-in breaks or opportunities to reflect. And lastly, some users expressed discomfort with the spaces provided, whether it be digital or physical. So based on these insights, it really helped us as designers to guide our design decisions based on what the members of RightGirl really wanted, so that we can address this to a wider audience. So this is what you kind of want to do during this initial research process, understanding your users and understanding what you're trying to solve with your designs. Yeah, so based on the insights from our competitive analysis and user interviews, we move on to this ideation phase. Our goal here was to frame the challenges we uncovered as opportunities to inspire creative writing, creative thinking, and brainstorming. So I personally like to ask myself questions so that I'm answering and I'm questioning myself and answering at the same time. And these are some of the questions that our team decided to ask. How might we inspire brainstorming and creative thinking by framing challenges as opportunities? So instead of pressuring users with streaks or rigid goals, we wanted to reframe the process as an invitation to explore, where challenges spark inspiration rather than stress. So this could include features like creative prompts, flexible writing sessions, or mind and body breaks so that we release this pressure of having to write. The second question we asked was, how might we guide writers while allowing them to tap into their imagination expression? We sought to design tools that provided gentle guidance without stifling creativity. This could take the form of writing prompts that users can interpret freely, or intuitive interface that suggests but doesn't constrain users. The idea was to nurture creativity by balancing structure with open-ended possibilities. So these questions kind of serve as the foundation for brainstorming ideas that we as designers could kind of bring up, making sure we address these problems, but also being creative at the same time. We want to make sure it's inspiring, but also flexible for our users. And iteration. This is really important. So many stages of lo-fis, mid-fis, and hi-fis. You just keep iterating until you get to like the final product. Here you can see there's so many different wireframes, and none of these were actually part of our final product. So it's really important that you just continue designing until you get to the point where you really like it and your users like it too. And usability testing. This happens after a certain phase where your mid-fis are done and you're kind of in your hi-fi stages. And during our usability testing for RightGirl's app, one of the key insights, some of the key insights we gained was the need for user-centric wording. Testers consistently suggested clearer guiding text and action phrases to make the app experience more intuitive and personable. So based on this feedback, we incorporated user-centric wording throughout the app, refining buttons or cards based on this feedback. Our goal was to make the app feel more relatable and easy to navigate. So it's really important that the users gave us this type of feedback. So here you can see on the right image, on this left side, is initially our cards were labeled as mental, physical, and both. But after our usability testing and hearing that they wanted more intuitive phrases, we decided to change it to my mind, my body, and all of me. Since our main priority is our audience, we need to make sure to hear them out and make those changes if our design team finds it useful. Yeah, final designs. I didn't get to put the whole prototype since there's so many frames to it, but this is our general frame. But visit us at lablueprint.org where you can see all of our projects from last year and our previous years. All of our case studies and prototypes are linked. So it's going to be helpful and a lot of fun seeing all of your previous projects as well. But yeah, now that we kind of went through the whole process, let's break it down together and I'll drop a poll and let me know if you guys think that RightGirl's project best fits as a problem solution or process focused case study. And then feel free to drop it in the chat as well why you think so. Let me. Let me know if you guys can see the poll. Okay, seems like everyone. I'll give it one more minute. Okay, let me end the poll and then share results. Yeah, so most of us said process focus, which is right. There is no right or wrong answer since we did problem solution case study would also work for Right Girl, since we are trying to solve the problem of wanting a bigger digital space for Right Girl. But in this case, we focused more on the process focus since we're going through a lot of the processes, the research behind it. Since this was a year-long project, there was a lot to it. So I would also say that Right Girl would probably best suit a process-focused case study. It really allows you to kind of highlight the entire journey we went through from the user research phases, the ideation, the testing, and the final design. This structure, I think, is perfect for showcasing that iterative nature of the project and how the design evolved over time, since we saw that the lo-fis, hi-fis were all so different. But yeah, so most of our projects at LA Blueprint are process focused, even though you can say it is problem solution as well. We like to say it's process focused because it's a year-long project and we can really understand the process, take time over fall quarter to do the user research, winter quarter to do user interviews, usability testing, and our last spring quarter to kind of refine anything and a final products. But yeah, so we actually like to take that extra step to take a longer process and do a process focused one, since we really want to take time to ask the right questions to the right people and solve the right problems. And that's our general mission, wanting to help using technology, basically. Yeah, and this is like the general structure overview. We went over problem statement, initial research, that includes user interviews and user research, ideation exploration, prototyping and testing, and the final designs. So yeah, what makes the case study so important? Like everyone says like, oh, as a designer, like your case study is really important, but we really need to understand why in order to get to that point where your portfolio really shows who you are as a designer. And personally, I think these are like the top fives or maybe top four, and the preparing for your interview really goes for everyone. One being that it demonstrates problem-solving abilities. A case study really showcases how you approach complex design challenges. It highlights critical thinking and problem-solving skills, which is really important as a designer. It shows potential to your recruiters, your employers to see how you tackle and resolve this real-life issue. Two, it shows design process. It reveals your step-by-step design process from research to ideation to prototyping and your final execution. It's a really good way for us to see who you are as a designer and how you go through this design process. Three, it measures impact. By including outcomes and metrics at the end of your case study, it proves how effective your design work was. It demonstrates how your work benefits users or solve business problems, providing tangible evidence of your success. Sometimes case studies your projects don't include actual metrics and numbers, but doesn't matter. I personally think that this impact is both metrics and what you gained out of this project. Like the reflection, personally, I think is really important. And lastly, tell a story. A well-crafted case study narrates your journey as a designer. It helps you communicate your decisions and engage potential employers or clients with a compelling story about your work and its impact. It's really important that you're telling the story since you know the project the best. So you're the only one who can really engage your audience and introduce them to every step of your design process and your design decisions. And lastly, preparing for interviews. A lot of times during a UX UI interview, you introduce your recruiter or person to your case study, and oftentimes you have a case presentation. And that's where you kind of run down important key features, key components you worked on. And I think all of these are really important aspects into building a really strong persuasive case study. And it can show like really strong communication skills, your design skills, and your general achievements as well. I personally have always asked myself, so how do I present this if the case study is so long, so much to talk about during like a 30-minute interview maybe? This is kind of what I like to do. Craft a clear narrative, structure your story so that you begin with the problem you addressed, guide the audience through your design process, and conclude with the solution and its impact. This is like the general bridge of what your presentation could kind of look like, since you're kind of summing up your entire case study into a couple of slides. Here, it's really important that you craft this clear narrative so that you're engaging your audience and making sure the audience understands what your project was in a short period of time. It's important to highlight those key components and key points in general. You don't have that much time, so emphasize how your design solved their problem and highlight that outcome immediately. Show concrete results to demonstrate the effectiveness of your design work. So I like to highlight the key points and the key pain points, and what you solved from that. Use visuals effectively. In a case study, it's a lot of text, so I think a presentation is a good way to kind of incorporate fun visuals at the same time, since it's a lot of talking instead of them reading your slides. So I like to include screenshots and prototypes of my design so that I can refer back to it as I'm talking to them. And make sure to keep your slides clean since it's all about you talking to your recruiter. So they're not going to take the time to read your slide. They want to kind of see how you communicate your thoughts directly. And practice your delivery. I'll always have problems with making sure like I know what I'm saying to my recruiter or my employer. So make sure you rehearse your presentation a lot so that you know what you're saying. And prepare for questions. They will ask you questions I had experience where they asked me questions during the presentation. So don't be alarmed when they do that. Just be prepared to show them how much of an understanding you have of your project and readiness to discuss that work in detail. And lastly, set yourself apart. I personally think a unique presentation style, whether it's through your graphics or your presentation style, the way you talk, it's really important since everyone's case studies contain the same information and structure. Yeah, so by following these tips, you will be able to create a more compelling or effective case study presentation that showcases your amazing design skills. But I wanted to kind of go over what this main difference between a case study and case study presentation is. We kind of covered in the previous slide, but the difference between having a lot of text versus highlighting important key points is really important. This presentation requires quick highlights of what your key components were and communicating the essential elements in order for your person to understand what you've been working on. As I said earlier, case study is really text heavy. I feel like nowadays case studies are also more fun. You kind of have more visuals. It doesn't have to be like strong titles like user research, user interview. Lately, I've been seeing that a lot of case studies are more playful, like your presentation, but I personally still think that presentation contains more visuals over text. So it's important to find that balance between visual focus and text focused. And yeah, narrative versus storytelling. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like both your case study and presentation can be storytelling style, but the case study does contain more information since whoever's looking through your portfolio has more time to understand each process and each section of your user research. So it definitely should contain more detailed narratives and more chronological order of what you've been working on. But the presentation is more storytelling. You want to make sure your audience is engaged and understand your whole design journey. Yeah, in my presentation, I also like to add a lot of key metrics, whether it's graphs or tables, so that it's really easy for the audience to read. And yeah, so how do I set myself apart? This is always like one of the biggest struggles as a designer. How do I set myself apart when we have similar projects, similar problem statements? I think it's all about storytelling. Um, Setting yourself apart in a case study presentation is all about the storytelling and how you convey your work. While covering the essential components of your case study and design process, it's important to consider um, how you're kind of engaging your audience and how you're talking to your audience with this personal presentation style. I like to develop this personal touch where it's infusing your presentation with elements that reflect your personality or your design style. A lot of people have their own designs or graphics in their portfolios, so I like to use those design elements and add that into my presentation. Since a lot of the times your audience, your employers already looked through your portfolio, I think it's a nice reminder that you include those elements into your presentation as well. And then just creating a consistent visual theme all throughout is really important so that it's really good, easy read to the eye. And this unique visual style can make your presentation stand out. This section, very show enthusiasm, I feel like is really important. You need to know why you're kind of talking about this project specifically. Why did you think that project was relevant to the company or the club you're applying for? Your excitement about the design process and the final outcome is something that will engage your audience and want them to learn more about you. Yeah, so I think that a compelling presentation not only showcases your work, but it also demonstrates your communication skills and ability to engage with your audience effectively. And by focusing on these aspects, you'll be able to kind of have your own unique style when presenting, showcasing your design skills, but also you as a person. Yeah, that was basically the whole section for understanding case studies and case presentations. I know we have some Blueprint members right now, but I'm also sure that some of you guys want to apply for next year as well. So I thought it'd be helpful to add a Blueprint design interview section just to go over some things to expect when we do recruitment. I personally think that getting to know you as a person is one of the most important parts. We really want to prepare you to grow as a designer with these impactful projects. So during our interview, we're just trying to learn about you, see your passion for social good, since that's our main mission, and see potential as a designer. Obviously, we care about your experience as a design, but we also really emphasize if you really love design and if you're passionate about helping solve issues in this for social good. We also look at whiteboarding and casing questions, where whiteboarding is we give you a mock-up website and we want to see how quickly or what kind of questions you ask yourself to see where the errors are in this mock-up website. We want to see, in casing questions too, we want to see how you break it down. Some questions like you ask yourself to understand the problem statement, what type of iterations you would make to get to that stage are all things that we want to see during this application and use in the interview process. But yeah, that was basically it. And I'll just take some questions if you guys have any. Okay, so I got a question asking a previous case study presentation I've done. Yes, I think I could share it, but give me a second to pull it up. In the meantime, you guys can still ask some questions if you have any. I'll answer a couple more questions and then share my screen again. I got a question asking, how many case studies should you have in a portfolio for applying to clubs on campus? I'll talk about Blueprint specifically. We don't have a number, like a certain number we expect from you. I would say one strong case study is better than having 2 or 3 smaller projects. We don't expect you to kind of present, we don't expect you to have a case study presentation for us. We just want to make sure that you have some type of experience with UX design, whether it's UX or UI design. We want to see your process, we want to understand your process. So I would just say have one really strong case study or a project you're really confident talking to us about, like giving us like a rundown of what the project was, and helping us understand what you've been working on as a designer. But yeah, but do make sure to have a portfolio with you since we want to learn about you, your design work, even if it's not UX UI. A lot of members have experience in graphic design as well, fine arts, a lot of different types of design. Yeah. Another question, what are some common challenges you face while presenting case studies? If an interviewer asks you a question you weren't prepared for, tech issues. Yeah. I think, yeah, so I would say I've gotten a lot of like questions during my presentation as someone who's like really scared to kind of public speak and something like that. Getting questions I'm not prepared for, like I like stop for a second, like as I'm presenting, especially as I'm presenting and someone asks me a question. But for me, I like to just take a minute to really think about the question first, and they don't mind. I think they prefer that you take the time to kind of reconsider the question and then answer instead of giving them an answer on the spot. So when it came to that type of question, I was like, oh, can you give me a second? And I kind of rethink, and I try to relate everything to the project I was talking about. So I think a question I got was, let me think. For my most recent interview question, I think I got was during a usability testing question, they asked me, oh, like, why is it that if you only interviewed like 5 people, do you ever care to like ask anyone else outside of like Right Girl, let's say? But for me, that's a question that they ask since this is like a real world company. So they care about like how you apply this to the real life or like actual company setting. So in that case, I responded as, oh, like Right Girl only focuses on their members and it's a smaller community. So we really wanted to emphasize hearing out the users first. And once Right Girl gets to a digital space where it's more globally used, that's when we would ask more users and make it a bigger usability testing. So I like to refer back to whatever else I was talking about before. Hopefully that kind of tech issues, honestly, I don't think I've experienced it, but for me, I make sure that I'm in a space where Wi-Fi is like really good. And I like to have a backup laptop with me just in case I need to transfer laptops. Yeah. Next question, when's the applications open and are you guys going to have any upcoming info sessions? Yeah, so applications are we're gonna be at EAF on the 24th, September 24th, where you can learn about all other clubs, but we're gonna be there too, passing out flyers. We're gonna have a in-person info session on the 30th, September 30th at 7 p.m. and an online info session October 1st at 7 as well. And the application deadline will be the 4th, that upcoming Friday at midnight. Yeah, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see beginning designers make when writing case studies? I think this applies for me too, even just from like last year, maybe. I think my case study was really text heavy. Like I did say like, oh, case study is more text heavy compared to a presentation. But as a recruiter or whoever's like reading through your portfolio, you still want to have fun as you're reading through it. So what I like to do is make it more playful. Like don't label it as user interviews and then have like a paragraph explaining what you kind of did. I like to play with the typography or like the font size, colors to emphasize the key points you got from that user interview, let's say. maybe like incorporate quotes, like bigger quotes, so that the user kind of the audience like reads that over like a smaller paragraph. I personally think that helped a lot, since no one's gonna sit down and like read through your entire case study for like 10 minutes. So I think that's an effective way to kind of avoid that mistake of having too much text in your case study. Another question, what is the designer collaboration dynamic like? Do designers iterate on the same components, or each work individually and offer feedback to one another? At least in Blueprint, we have our main sprints. You work on separate components, but it really depends on your project lead for that year. But usually, I think we kind of, during the fall quarter or winter quarter, we iterate together. We discuss a lot so that we kind of get to the point where we understand everyone's features. That way, as you're designing, your designs don't look different. Even though you have very different design styles, working in a team is really important to consider everyone else's design, so that your design isn't the only one that stands out, or it's the only one that kind of doesn't look like the brand you're going for. So I think we really emphasize talking to one another, talking to designers and developers, understand feasibility, and understand what the problem you're trying to solve. Since sometimes you have to focus on a cleaner design than a really creative design, since it's the problem we're solving instead of making a creative, fun design. So yeah, I would say that we talk together in the beginning, and then once we kind of settle down and decide on your features, we start working on them separately. But every week we have work sessions twice a week. So during those moments, we offer each other feedback and talk about like our designs to get more input or make changes as a group together. Yeah, the backup laptop is so important. Yeah, sometimes I'm on my phone just to make sure, but yeah, those were all the questions, and then I'll quickly show you guys my Figma. This is like an older case study, since my most recent one isn't updated. But let's see, yeah. So this was also a Blueprint project for 2022. So the 2 years ago. So this was the project I worked on, Trans Can Work. I like to do a general project overview. Back then, now it's updated, but my portfolio back then kind of had like a Canvas page to it. So I kind of used that as my presentation background as well. Kind of introducing them to Blueprint, a reference to like my resume as well. So I can talk to them about what Blueprint is, and then also kind of introduce them to Trans Can Work, the project I worked on. Introducing them to the pain points, the goal, timeline. Yeah. I would say, like, now that I'm looking back at it, I would say it's a bit, I could use less text too, and maybe have more illustrations to it. But I think these sections have a lot of text because it's understanding the user research process. So as we get into like the ideation process, you can see that most of them are images, kind of showing them the previous iteration and the new iteration. And then the final design, these are all GIFs, I believe. And then I like to end it with the outcome. And then the learning curve over here. And then this is our team. But yeah, that is my older version. I will update mine soon. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, of course. Let me see if yeah, so that was basically it. This is the last slide. Like I mentioned earlier, EAF, see you guys on the 24th. We'll be there. All exec PL members will be there to kind of say hi, pass out flyers. We'll have stickers there too. We'll have an in-person info session the 30th, virtual info session on the 1st, and the applications are due on the 4th. And we're recruiting both developers and designers. And if you missed the workshop for devs that we had last week, I believe, it's on our YouTube channel right now, just LA Blueprint. And this designer workshop will be on there soon as well. Yeah, thank you so much for coming, guys. Hopefully it was fun.